Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I am mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too. Continuing in our series of male fairy tales and the initiatory aspects of them, we're going to do the story called The Companions, which is a takeoff of another Grimm's tale, which I will include in the email that I send to you. You can find it in Grimm's called The Six That Made Their Way Through the World. Some slightly different variations on this tale, but you'll get the idea. But before we begin that, I want to remind you that I talk about affirmation all the time, which is nothing but realization that the material plane is objectified thought. The material plane is objectified thought. Whatever you give your attention to tends to govern your life. And so, of course, if you don't direct it, there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty and suspense about what's going to happen in your life. Um, and a lot of people don't have faith. They try to use the idea of affirmation, and then if things go wrong or if they don't get a demonstration, as we say, then they break down and they give up. And then that becomes the new point of attraction for them. See, that's the idea. Um, Most people focus on what they don't want. And based on the law of attraction, that which is like unto itself is drawn, they end up activating what they don't want instead of learning to pay attention to what they do want. Because when you activate something that's not wanted in your life, you pay attention to it, and the law of attraction helps to make it more. And that's exactly what you don't want. So the suggestion is find something that feels good and feels good while you're thinking about it, or feels good while you're doing it. Even if you have to do it in virtual reality, even if you have to do it just in your mind to begin with. But that's a start. And then you learn in your daily life to put yourself in environments, which means thinking about where you want to be, what you want to do, and then all of a sudden you design the moves. You prefer the moves in your environment. And so I don't think it's denial to not focus on the negative. You want to focus on the negative, I think it'll just be more in your life. So when you live in this way, a certain vitality happens in your life, even in circumstances that are not to your advantage. There's still moments of joy that you can find. But basically, it really comes down to being happy. And how you're happy, it doesn't mean every single moment of your life is happy, but first you learn if in any way you try to cause harm to other people or yourself, you can't be happy. Even the Buddha would say something really, really simple. Speak and act with an impure mind, and trouble follows you, like the wheel follows the cart, or the ox that pulls it. Speak and act with a pure mind, and happiness follows you, like a shadow, unshakable. So each one of us has the responsibility about what we do with our attention, and we'll give you an affirmation for that at the end of this. Anyway, the story of the companions. You know, in olden times, there once lived an aged witch queen who hated humanity so much that she wanted to kill every man that existed so that the human race would die out. And it so happened that she had the most beautiful daughter, a princess who was so exquisitely lovely that she set up this challenge for all men who she knew couldn't resist this. And that was, if you want to marry my daughter, then I have a couple of tasks for you to do. But here's the deal. If you can't do the tasks, I'm going to chop your head off and put it on a pike so everyone can see. This is the danger that you're facing if you want the most beautiful woman in the world. And of course, if you saw her castle, there were tons of heads impaled on spikes for all the men who tried and failed. Anyway, there was this one young prince who heard about the beauty, the unmatched beauty of the witch's daughter. And he, of course, asked his father, the king, can I go to see if I can make her my bride? And the king said, absolutely not. Are you kidding? Don't you know that the track record is not good? Haven't you heard about all the people who've lost their lives trying to get to her? No way. And from the moment that his father denied him access to this quest, to this journey, he became sick. And he was just lying in his sickbed. For 7 years he lied in his sickbed. And even though the king had every resource available to him, he tried acupuncture and Reiki and chiropractic and amino acid therapy and proteolytic enzymes and everything, nothing could help the kid. And then at that point, the king was wise enough to realize it's not a physical sickness. He's sick at heart. So he called his son and he said, listen, I give you permission to go on your mission. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone else to say, go do it. I'm behind you all the way. And so as soon as he had permission to go on his mission, he miraculously recovered and he was healthy as could be. So off he went to find his fortune. And on the way, as he was walking, he came across what he thought was a huge mound. It was almost like a mini mountain, but it seemed to be heaving up and down as if it was breathing. And then when he walked around, which took him quite a while, he found that he was in the presence of this huge man, which we'll call the Stout One. And he said to him, my, you're pretty large. He says, oh, you think I'm large now? I have the capacity to expand myself 300 times bigger than this. And he said, that's a very interesting quality. Would you like to come on this journey with me? I'm trying to get the most beautiful woman along. Stout guy said, well, I got nothing better to do, so fine. So off they went. And then they traveled a little ways or a long ways or a short way, and all of a sudden they came upon a pair of legs that seemed to kind of disappear into the forest. It was so long, and they kept on going, and before long they came upon what we will call the Tall One. And the prince said, my, you're very, very tall. He says, oh, you think I'm tall now? I can stretch myself so long, 300 times taller than this. Wow, that's probably an interesting attribute to have around. Would you like to come on this quest with me? So now he had the Stout One and the Tall One. They walked a little ways or a long ways, whatever time it takes in these stories, and then they came upon a man who was like freezing cold. He was shivering, and it was like 80 degrees out. And they said, what's wrong with you? He said, I have this condition where, like, when it's hot, I'm freezing cold, and when it's cold, I'm burning up. I can't help it. He says, a man of tempers. Would you like to come in this quest with my friends, the Stout One and the Tall One? And so they got 3. And then there were 3. And as they came upon the next one, they saw this guy with his ear to the ground. And they said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm listening. I can hear anything that goes on anywhere in the earth. He said, well, what do you hear? He said, I hear the sound of a sword separating a head from a neck. Ooh, well, that could be a very, very valuable attribute. Would you like to come with us? He said, sure. So now he got the Stout One, the Tall One, the man of tempers, and the listener. And then they saw another man on their way who was gazing into the future. And they said, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm looking at a fly 2 miles away. I could see its left eye. What? Yeah, I could see anything anywhere on the earth. He says, well, can you see into the witch's castle? Oh, yeah, I see some sword separating a head from some shoulders. Man of great vision. Well, we could use a skill like you. Would you like to come with us and be one of our companions? Now he was in. And so they kept on going, and finally they met their 6th companion to fulfill their quest. And that was a man who was bandaged on his eyes. And they said, what's up with you? He says, oh, I can't remove the bandage because any time that I remove the bandage, if I look at anything, it shatters into 1,000 pieces. Ah, the man of piercing gaze. Well, they explained the situation to him, and now the fellowship was complete. It was the prince, the Stout One, the Tall One, the man of tempers, the man of great vision, the listener, and the man with the piercing gaze. So off they went, and they found their way to the witch's castle. And of course, they were appalled at the amount of heads all around. But the prince was undaunted, and so he went to the witch and said, I'm here to claim your daughter. And she says, oh, that's fine with me. But as you can see, there's a deal to be made. If you could do a few tasks for me and fulfill those tasks, she's yours. But if you can't understand the deal, I'm going to chop your head off and kill you. Are you in? He said, yes, I'm in. So she said, all right, the first test is really simple. I lost my ring at the bottom of the sea. If you can bring it back to me, simple. You've passed the first test. So he said, all right, no problem in that. So he turned to the man with great vision, and he said, can you see where the ring is? And he just looked into the ocean. Of course, immediately he said, sure, I see where it is, right in the bottom. Oh, wonderful. And then, with the guidance of the man with great vision, the Tall One lengthened out his arm and went to the bottom of the ocean, grabbed the ring, brought it back right away. 1, 2, 3. Went to the witch and said, here's your ring. She was kind of surprised because it happened pretty quickly. All right. I got another task for you. in that field over there, you'll see there are 300 oxen, and I want you to eat every one of those oxen. Write down hair, heft, hoofs, everything, not leaving a trace. And if you can eat all 300, then you'll probably be very, very thirsty. And I have a wine cellar over here with hundreds of barrels of wine, and you'd have to drink all of the wine, not even leave a drop. If there's as much as a hair on the oxen left or a drop in any of those kegs, then you're forfeiting your head. He said, well, as a royal person, it's not worthy to eat by yourself. You always have to show generosity. So could I have somebody eat with me? He said, sure. You want to take one person for you? Fine. So he called on the stout one. Listen, I know you're hungry, and the big body of yours, so here's your chance to go at it. And the stout one, you couldn't believe it. Eating the oxen, he wasn't even waiting for them to be cooked to barbecue, just eating them as they were, all 300. It was like insane. And then he went to the wine cellar and drank every one of the kegs dry till it was like they collapsed from the dryness. He was sucking all out. And then when he was finished with the whole thing, he turned around and says, You call this a brunch? Really? The paucity of the serving? This is all you had for me? It was like a little aperitif. Are you kidding me? And then the prince went to the witch and said, well, as you can see, oxen are gone, wine is gone. That's number 2. And now the witch was kind of freaked because she said, nobody has ever gone this far before. She said, all right, one more task. And this one I think you'll find is kind of pleasant. I want to introduce you to my daughter. I want you to take her up into the tower. I want you to hold her in your arms, gaze in her eyes, and don't let her go till 12 o'clock midnight. And if you can do that till 12 o'clock midnight, she is yours. So the prince says, oh, this is not a test. This is a joy. But just in case there's any kind of trickery or tomfoolery going around, he had the tall one wrap his arms around him and the maiden, and the stout one stayed outside the door, and the other companions were inside. And it was true. She was so beautiful. When the moonlight came through the window, they were just tantrically gazing at each other's eyes, and you could see like, oh, there was a big love building here. But what they didn't know was that the witch created a spell, an enchantment over them, and they all fell asleep. And she whisked the daughter away and chained it to a rock out in the lonely moor. And then at about 11:45, midnight, all of a sudden, they woke up from the enchantment and they realized the princess was gone. So immediately the man of great vision, he looked out and said, I see where she is. And immediately the tall one took 2 steps and was right there. But he brought with him the man of piercing gaze. And when the man of piercing gaze was there, they took off his bandage and his eyes shattered the rock where the princess was chained to. And then in a thrice, the tall man just took 1 and 2 steps, was back into the castle, up into the tower, put the princess back in the arms of the prince, just in time for when the witch returned, thinking that she would now be able to kill him. But she realized the princess was there. Well, this guy was like a match for her. So at first she said, all right, I guess you've won my daughter. You can go away with her tomorrow. But then she turned to the daughter and said, this guy is just a commoner, because he hadn't told her that he was a prince. He says, you can't marry a commoner. So I think we should have a task that they don't know about that will finish them once and for all. And she was kind of persuaded by the logic of the witch, because she had no idea that this guy was a prince. So she said, all right, what do you suggest? Well, we're going to put him in this room that's made of iron floor, iron walls. We'll bar the door, and we'll have the cook of our castle heat up its tremendous fire underneath, and we'll burn him to death. Well, it doesn't sound nice, but, the princess was already used to having all these guys lose their lives. So what was another country bumpkin? So that's what happened. She said, well, now you guys should have a feast before you go. And she set this beautiful repast for them. And then she locked the doors and had the cook make this fire. And the fire burned the building until it was so hot. And they realized all of a sudden, this is getting really hot in here. And they tried to get out, but the windows were closed. The door was locked. And then they realized what was happening. So now they turned to the man of tempers. They say, come on, you haven't helped us do your thing yet. So the man of tempers, he started shifting. Because remember, if it's hot, he gets cold. And if it's cold, he gets hot. So all of a sudden, he brought this tremendous frost. And everything froze over, the food and the windows and everything. And then when the fire died down, the witch was really surprised to find out that they were still alive. So at this point, she had to let him go, but she was still a vindictive bitch. So she sent her warriors to kill him. And then immediately the man of hearing heard their hoofs, and the man of great vision saw them coming. And so the stout one, he just like gave himself the Heimlich maneuver, and he vomited out all the wine. And like the Pharaoh's army drowning in the Red Sea, those warriors completely died. But that was not enough for the witch, so she sent out another brigade. And at this point, again, the man of great hearing heard them coming, the man of great vision saw them coming. And then they said, all right, time for you to do your thing. And they took the man with the piercing gaze, and they took his bandage off of him, and he blew them all to smithereens like shattered glass. And at that point, the witch realized, there's nothing I can do against this person. He has too much magic for me. So she let it go. So off they went with the princess. And at a certain point, you know how seasons sometimes end, and even people who are your great companions have to go their own ways. So they all diverged and said goodbye to each other. And then the prince took the princess back towards his father's kingdom. But he didn't say anything to her yet. He said, listen, before I go back into my village and let everybody know what's going on, can you wait here for a second? So he went back and he told everybody what his plan was. And that was to make the princess live as a swineherder's wife. So he came back and he brought her to his village, and he dressed her down and took her out of her princess type of garments and gave her the garments of a swineherd. And he says, this is what your life is like now. You're going to be the wife of a swineherder, and we're going to move pig waste because that's what we do. She didn't like the prospect as a princess, but you know what? He did brave the fire. He did pass all the tests for me. So I guess I'm going to accept my lot as a swineherder's wife. And that's what she did. And then in a little time or a long time or whatever time it takes in these stories, one day the villagers went to her and said, so where's your husband? He said, oh, he's probably down in the village making bargains for swine and moving pig waste, because that's what our life is about. He said, why don't we go find him? And so they kept on walking with her, not only just to the village, but they went right to the palace. And without stopping, went right into the throne room. And there was the prince sitting in all his regal arraignment attire. But she didn't recognize him until she got so close to the throne that she gazed in his eyes, and all of a sudden, everything came back to her. It was that same look that she was accustomed to when they were in the moonlight together. And once she saw that the prince wasn't really a swineherder, but a prince, then she realized what a wonderful life was ahead for her. And so, of course, they married and lived happily ever after. So that's the story of the companions. And I hope you guys recognize that when you go on different quests, you need permission to go on your mission. Otherwise, you'll lay waste in your sickbed, because that's always the challenge, isn't it? Stay, and you certainly face death, or get on the road and test your merit. So, in the end, remember, it has to do with what are you paying attention to? What are you giving your energy to? I pay attention to what I want. The law of attraction responds to the vibrations I emit. I practice feeling good vibrations, and the law of attraction brings me more of that. I practice creating dominant vibrations that serve me, and I go for joy. I hope that you do too. See you tomorrow.